So it's 8:30 and I'm going to call this Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting to order. Before we get actually started, we just have a couple keeping items. This is the first meeting of the year for the Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting. And so we do need to pick a chair. In the past, we've sometimes kept the chair for a 2-year period, but this would be the time to pick the chair for the Finance Committee, Economic Development Committee. I'm the current chair. I'm happy to continue as the current chair, but it's up to the committee.
I would move that you continue as current chair.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? And all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion unanimously carries. The other housekeeping item is our time and date. Currently, we meet right now at 8:30 on the last Tuesday of the month. Is that a time that we want to continue to meet? Is there a different time that works better? I'm open for discussion.
Time works perfectly for me because I have 4 meetings back to back here at City Hall. For me, it works.
I don't see a reason or need to adjust the time.
Okay, can I get a motion to keep the time and day of the month for the Finance and Economic Development?
I would move to keep the time and day of this meeting as is.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion, they signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone opposed? And that motion also unanimously carries. And then we have today's agenda. Again, motion to approve.
Move to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion unanimously carries. We have an agenda, and first up on our agenda is our 2023 Market at the Depot. Turn it over to you, Wesley.
Good morning, Chair and committee members and staffs and colleagues. I'm here to talk a little bit about and highlight some of the things that we did at the depot, particularly around the food truck plaza that we have over there on Lacey Boulevard. Over the last 2 years, we've been piloting these programs, and a lot of positive things and opportunities exist as we learn about how to better help our community, particularly the entrepreneurs that are doing food truck vendors out there. We did a lot of, with the help of Public Work and other city staff, we did a lot of physical improvement to the place, including adding electrical outlets, adding sunshade over the tables for people to sit and enjoy the food, adding lighting for festivities, create an environment of fun for folks to come, adding all those things with the existing replica depot and the playground. It created a destination place for a lot of folks to come out and enjoy the facility that was there. During the 2022 season, what we also learned is we partnered with a lot of local partners to do events. The South Sound Mopar with the car shows, they bring out on average about 20 cars and they park there, and a lot of people come out and enjoy the cars. We also did a Sunday market 4 times over the course of the 2022 summer, and that brought not only people out, but also brought out about 20 to 25 vendors. And at the last market event, we did the Halloween theme. We partnered with Love Local Lacey LLC. They brought entertainment out. They brought Halloween costume contest for the kids. It was a very festive day. It brought over 300 people easily. Brought over 25 vendors to the facilities. People was engaged. It was a very festive environment. So with that in mind, for 2023, we see opportunity to continue that growth and continue that engagement with our communities. And so we're looking at potentially doing more of those type of market events for 2022. So we're looking at doing 2 events per month, looking into 2022, starting April, May, whenever looking at the weather, if it's available to do that, starting in April, to do more market events to not only bring people out to that place, but also it will bring more business to our food trucks that are there now. And not only on that day, but once the people that come and visit, they know those food trucks are there, they will come after the market event. And so those are things that we're looking to help out those entrepreneurs as they expand their business. And also, there's also an opportunity for where we could see if we can find a coordinator that can also look at potentially supporting the food truck plaza and sort of help out and manage that food truck vendor as well. So yeah, so that's the update for the food truck for 2023. That's our plan. What we're looking at is potentially moving about 25,000 to address that need. And so that's it for now. I think that funding will come from the existing funding with economic development that we currently already have for 2022. And yeah, so anything to add, Rick?
Yeah, I'll add a few more things because as I think that the council committee is aware, one of the things that we've always looked at when we went and conducted the Depot District Sub-Area Plan was, again, trying to create some type of focal civic point. And the museum site is that long-term. And also complementing the museum site was looking to have some type of food truck plaza and pop-up market type of event to bring people in on weekends and other types, just to kind of get familiarity with that area. And with the opportunity of the museum planning and the site itself, we were able to start off with the food truck and build it, organically. In the first year, as you are aware, we kind of got a few trucks out there and kind of tested the water and learned from that. Last year, we were able to do some improvements and make it a little bit more attractive for vendors as well as people accessing the food trucks. And we had the opportunity, as Wesley said, to bring in a pop-up market that had 4 events. And those 4 events were really well received, both by the food truck vendors, but also by community members. And it also fits in our economic development goals to create opportunities for entrepreneurs and small businesses start out with, vending at markets. Sometimes that's what they continue to do, is the market type of circuit, but a lot of times they can also grow that business into and expand it into something more, whether it be a brick and mortar or online, getting that brand awareness. So this provides that opportunity for small business development as well. So going into next year, as Wesley said, we're looking at expanding the market. The challenge we had last year was the amount of time for planning and with a partner, and it was kind of brought up not last minute, but quickly. So this year we're looking at establishing a contract for a contractor to come in and manage the market operations. So have plenty of time to plan the whole event season and have that Sunday pop-up day market once a month and a nighttime market once a month between, May and October. And so we just want to make sure the council is aware to ask any questions, but also that we are issuing an RFP for contracting services. And as Wesley mentioned, this will be a carryover from the 2022 budget into 2023 for the unspent funds we use for site development at the depot.
Go ahead, Lenny.
I would just say, I think that's great that you're gonna do more events there. I was at a couple of the events this last year, particularly the Halloween market. The crowd loved it. I mean, it was just a really positive atmosphere. People were super happy. I talked to all of the food truck vendors. They were all thrilled. I mean, they did a lot of business that day, and it does bring back repeat business for them. I think you're completely right about that. So they really like when we do that. And so, yeah, the public loved it. The crowd was really enthusiastic.
So I just have a couple comments. I think as most of this committee knows, I live right next to the food truck court. And so I'm there quite often. And of course, now the vendors have gotten to know me, and every time I stop by, they chat a little bit. And one of the things that we realized is that I'm not sure if we can consider it a full food truck court yet, because you're never 100% sure if a food truck is going to be open and serving food at the time you want it. And so that's my first observation. And even talking to the vendors, I've mentioned it to them that in order for you to be successful, you have to keep hours because there's nothing worse than wanting to show up and getting a specific type of food offered there at the truck, and they are closed during the hours where you would normally think they're open. And so I know they have struggled a little bit trying to find employees, and that's understandable. But I really think we need to get our food trucks there to have more regular hours and be able to stay there and have more regular hours, so that the public can know that when they want the food they're providing, it's going to be available. The other thing is I think we need a couple more options there as well. It's really tough. This idea of rotating trucks, it sounds good, but it's not good small business practice, because if you don't know where the truck's at, not everyone's going to look online, see and try to follow where the truck is at any given day. You expect it to be in one location. And so even though the food truck or trailer in theory is mobile, actually the less mobile they are, the better it is for the business, because you need that for repeat business. It's a thing that Lenny can tell you. I mean, anyone who's been in business for themselves knows that you have to keep hours, and sometimes you're keeping hours when it's slow, and you're like, why am I open? But it's that one or two people that could stop by, that when they do stop by and you're closed, they may never come see you again. And so finding a way to have food trucks there on more regular, stable hours, I think is really important for the overall success. And I think we also need, it's such a different variety of hit or miss food there. And so, if we could get like a pizza truck, or we can get some other main staple food vendors that are there with regular hours, if we could fit at least three trucks there easily. And then I think that would help everyone out. And everyone sort of agrees when I'm talking with them. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And then you come back and you may or may not, they may or may not be open. And so that's really tough. And I think it's really what's held back the overall ongoing success of the food truck court. You just never know if you're going to be able to get food there or not, any lunch or dinner time throughout the week. And no one's gonna look on some schedule to see if they happen to be open before you head out. As a matter of fact, most of the time you're making a decision on the fly, and you're like, oh, there's the food truck court. I'm hungry for something you've had there before, and you pull in. And so that's how a lot of that business works. It's not like people are planning it well in advance. It's a really good visual location, but you're never 100% sure who's open. There may be a truck there, but they're not open, and what type of food is readily available there either. And so if we could get some sort of signage on Pacific Avenue and Lacey Boulevard that said, food truck court, whatever, you don't need to spend a bunch of money on it, and then have a list of the type of the businesses that are open that are more visible. That would be very, very helpful, because you're always kind of looking to see, is an open sign on? Then what's that truck over there? Is it, it's hard to tell what food's going on at the same time. So that's my 2 cents. I think it still has a ton of opportunity for our community to to be successful and to, start off there and grow their business. But we definitely need more options, and we need more regular standard hours there out of them.
Fully,
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
So you hit on all the things I wanted to say and more. I tried to chase my favorite food truck around. That lasted about 2 attempts.
Yeah.
And I gave up. And so then I went back to the people who I know where they are, because they're always there, even when I drive by at night, they didn't move. And so all those things and more. One of the things that I was concerned about is I know that this location has a horizon, it has a timeline. And I'm concerned that if we build it and then we have to shut it down to build a museum, is there a backup location? Is there a secondary plan?
yes.
It
Go
is.
for it, Rick.
This is long-term, we're identifying either on the east end of the site or the area around the roundabout as that long-term location. And we chose this site as a interim location to kind of test the waters and see what the interest is for this type of venue and operation. So as the museum is built or gets closer, scheduled to being built, we'll start looking at a more formal and put more location and also amenities tied to that. But this is this learning process that we're undertaking on the interim. And I fully agree with the regular hours and regular truck. And I think if you think when we first started this, was a new endeavor for us. And that first year we did learn quite a bit, because we did have trucks that ran out of food during the lunch hour. They were just, and we weren't sure what the demand is. We had trucks that I think maybe 1 or 2 that were there fairly regularly, but they'd come and go. To the second year where we got a little bit more stable in the number of trucks that were there. By the end of the year, I think we had 4 trucks that were regularly there, and they were open on extended hours from lunch to evenings. And going into the next year, that's one of the reasons too of looking at this contract. We want to have somebody to manage the market and events, but if there's ability within that contract to also help with food truck recruitment and support as well, that will help us in terms of managing and providing support for the food trucks to be there more regular and still recruit more diversity. I think we ended last year with 4 trucks, lava bowls, Bobbleistic, the Olympia vehicle, which was a great success and well received. And what's the name of the taco? Mia Blabo. And then also Wesley's got inquiries for additional potential vendors going into next year. So I do want to expand the offering and get more regularity, and it's something that we're building on towards that goal.
Lenny?
Yeah, I would just add, I think, and I completely agree, the regular hours are critical, because I've gone there and then they were closed, and it's frustrating. But I think a big part of that has been a labor issue too. They're having difficulty, in talking to a few of them, they're having difficulty staffing it. And on days when it's slow, for them, it's expensive to staff it. You gotta have 2 people sitting there and not doing any business, so it's difficult for them as well.
And you got also too, the trucks that we're having locate there are generally the single ownership, and they're the employees as well. You take the example of I remember when California Tacos and Tacos California, both 2 different companies came in. That was probably 8 or 9 years ago. And they started with 1 truck, and it rotated, it moved to the point where they were able to build their business and get multiple trucks and staffing. And then they started getting those regular locations. So it's a process for those businesses to build up the capacity to be able to do what you're doing, but we're providing that space so they have the opportunity to do that too. So that's something too, I think it should be remembered while we try to create this, in essence, an incubator, if you will.
Sure. And so have we ever solved the gray water issue there? Because I know that was the other sort of thing that was holding us back, is where do we dump the gray water?
That is, we don't have capacity to provide gray water at this time. We have electrical, and we refined the electrical so it's better accessible. But the gray water is something where we would have to do a sewer lateral into the site with the proper clean outs. But we don't want to do that and have a throwaway, because that's a more permanent structure. So that's something that we would have to do in line with the future museum projects, because that would also need to have sewer service. And then you're starting to get into, I think, one estimate because of the trenching and pipe and the number of clean outs, it was getting to be up to $200,000. So we held off on that until we could make sure that it was something that we would be able to get beneficial use for the future museum site out.
You know, the other thing that we can have on site, which is what a lot of when you ever get a bunch of food trucks together, you sometimes see this, is they'll have their own grease, you know, gray water site, big tank on site, you know, and it's usually you put it off the side and then they could all, you know, dump their grease and dump, you know, and that would be a huge benefit as well. And
We
I know
did,
there's a little- yeah.
You're right, they do have their holding tanks and their individual trucks, they do have some type of separator. But we have a spot that could dump gray water, but in talking to the health department as well as Lot and our public works department, there needs to be additional oil water separator and protection of the sewer system and the treatment plant in order to make that work. And so that. So
No, I'm talking about
that, or you put in the actual sewer lateral and extension.
No, I'm talking about, so like if you at Lake Fair, every year at Lake Fair, you know, there's all the food trucks there. And you have, if anyone's worked there, at the end of the day, you have to go dump all of your stuff. And it goes into a centralized tank that's a standalone tank that just sits on the property that gets dumped, you know, every month or something. Like whenever it's full, they call and someone dumps it. I don't know.
Yeah, and I've experience with that and with the Lake Fair and what you're talking about. And we can take a look at something like that, but again, that starts getting into elevated costs because there's somebody also needs to pump that tank. And so.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree, but you get 6 food trucks there and they all start splitting the cost to do that, then it becomes a lot more attractive, you know, because having to deal with that on a regular basis is one of the reasons why it's hard to stay in one spot. And so if we had something conveniently there, and yeah, maybe there's a cost to it, and maybe this is something the manager of the site can take a look at, you know, maybe it starts penciling out and making more sense for everyone. Scott Egger, you got.
Yeah, that's problematic in terms of uniform service delivery to all of our customers. When you start straying from the standard sewer that we deliver, you install this for this case, then the next developer that would have an expensive sewer to install says, well, why can't I just install a cistern like you got over there? So that can become very problematic when you start making.
It's not permanent. There's a company that will come out and drop a tank that has its own oil water separator, blah, 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 in it and handles it on its own. It's a standalone, it's not permanent. It can move whenever, right? If it's well, may need to take a look into it, but it's not something that we lost standalone system that we're trying. It's a temporary holding tank that another company comes and manages the tank.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind to me is, again, the Me Too. And we hear this from developers is, I can't get that generator or this item in this sewage lift station installed in time. So what can we do temporarily? We tell them, no, we're not going to accept a system until it meets our standards. Sure. So like you say, it's just, you know, we've seen it. It opens the door to the Me Too to, you know, can I do something different for our system?
I understand that, but you know, we're also in economic development. There's give and takes in whatever we do. We're trying to get a specific food truck court successful. This is one of the things that you need for a successful court. We don't want to spend the money for a permanent system. I mean, I just don't know what the other alternative is. I think we can talk about this more. I'm not worried about the Me Too people. This is something, you know, it's a standalone system. It's like the Me Too people complaining about this system being at Lake Fair. I mean,
we'll look into the cost of it, and Scott and I will talk about what some options will be. And then of course, with the Lake Fair, you got special events versus a year-round site. So we'll talk about that and figure out what issues there are, and then also look at what that ultimate cost would look like. And because one of the pieces too is does the city pay for that cost or build it into the lease with the trucks? And then, of course, we're trying to make those leases so that they're conducive to them getting started. So we'll kind of look at that cost and how to, what that looks like. And then again, look at the issue of making sure we're consistent and equitable under our codes.
Sure. Well, and it's talk to the food trucks. I mean, how big of an issue is it them trying to haul that off and then drop it down at lot every, a couple days or so on and so forth, compared to a system being there, where it could be a communal system for whatever time period it is, anyway, something to think about. Is there any other discussion on this?
Yeah.
Okay, then let's go to our next agenda item, which is the Toro Sentinel sole source purchase.
Thank you, Council. So we wanted to come forth to you today to talk about the HD Fowler sole source approval with Toro Sentinel purchasing. So we'd like to do after this is ask you guys to have a motion to forward a resolution declaring HD Fowler Company the sole source of supply to purchasing cellular Toro Sentinel controllers to full council, so we can move forward with this project. The request in last year's budget was for $175,000. We proposed a 4-year plan to convert all of our Toro Sentinel irrigation controllers from radio controlled to cellular controlled. And there's a couple of reasons for that I'll get into in a second. So the entire project's going to be about $525,000 to $600,000. Current today's value is $525,000 with increased, purchasing. Inflation might drive that up a little tiny bit. So we would need to be prepared for that. So what's really happening here is Toro Sentinel's no longer performing any service or making these radio controllers anymore. So we have to switch over to cellular. Same thing we're kind of doing with our lift stations, water treatment plants and everything else. So at this time, we were like, well, okay, what do we do? We have a couple different options here. So we looked into other controllers. CalSense and Rainbird's Maxicom were the two controllers that we looked at. They both have their pluses and minuses. Some could work. Nothing had the exact same setup that we currently have with how many stations in our controllers that we have and the capabilities that we like to use in our system currently. So looking at either one of those, there would probably be at least double the cost, right? So just take CalSense, for instance. I'll just talk about that one because that was the one that really stood out to us as the most possibility for us to switch over to. That would have about $1 million in parts instead of $500,000 in parts. And then that does not include, that's just for the control cabinets. That does not include flow sensing capability and computers or the computer software. And so we would have to retrofit all of our cabinets. We'd have to retrofit the flow sensors, which are underground installed on the mains for the irrigation system. And so those are very, very important to us because what they do is they tell us when there's low flow, which some of our irrigation heads, when there is maybe a sprinkler head that doesn't pop up, or it gets hit by a mower, or even vandalism where some kids maybe kick some heads off in the middle of the night, it'll tell us that there's low flow. So we know to go out and check those zones and say, okay, here's some repairs that need to be needed. It has the other capability too, of telling us whether there's high flow. And so if there's high flow for 3 cycles in a row, it shuts the whole system down to conserve water. And so we might have 48 zones on a controller, for instance, and after 3, it's going to shut off instead of running all night on this water main break, which, water conservation is pretty important to us. The other plans also don't have the length of cellular coverage that we want. So they have a 5-year plan instead of a 10-year plan, which we would have to repurchase. And they also don't support their software like Toro Sentinel does. Toro Sentinel supports their software for life, which is a really good benefit for us. What we found out though throughout this process is, well, one, it's a lot to spend, right? And they're sole source through Fowler. And we looked into where can we buy Toro Sentinel at? And so Toro Sentinel even said, if we try to buy out of state, HD Fowler is sole source for their products in this territory, that they would refer us back and say, you have to buy through HD Fowler, through this territory, because they're the distributor here. So we're sort of in this dilemma, you know, how do we go about this, right? We know that the WAC would allow us possibly, if we changed our purchasing policy to buy up to $115,000, you know, at a time. But at that same time, we are looking at buying $525,000 worth of product through one company. So we wanted to bring this to council, not only to make them aware, but to be fully transparent of what, you know, our intentions are. As this conversion goes over, what we will do is we keep the control cabinet, but we replace the interior parts. So there's a controller inside of the cabinet, which is in the staff report. And there's also the zone control circuit boards. Those would come out, and then we would put the new parts back in that same exact cabinet. So all the other additional parts for the system work. One cool thing about this too is that we can run parallel systems with the radio and cellular at the same time with the same software and the same computer. We have 2 that we tested this last year that are working currently. So ideally, what we would do through this process is we would be able to order the first amount of parts for the first controllers that we're going to switch over this year, have them installed and operational before irrigation system starts. So, you know, May, June timeframe. Let's see, I don't think I have anything else to add. Other than, you know, like I said, just making sure you're aware of kind of what we've gone through with the process. And we have looked at other options. We found that this is the best option, not only financially, but for all of the way the system works. It works the best for us and how we use our irrigation systems. Any
So,
questions?
Yeah, number one, I absolutely agree. We need to upgrade our irrigation system because there's, you can see it every once in a while when you're going through town where there's a busted head or something like that and the water's just going, you know, and it's just a bad look where here we're trying to, you know, telling everyone we have to conserve water and we have one of our own busted heads and it's just, you know, it's not a good look. So I totally agree with needing an upgrade system. Dave, I think you're online. I'm not aware of another time. I mean, I know there's some rules around doing sole source. I didn't realize all we had to do is a resolution. I thought we had to meet some other requirements to do sole source, just because we wanted to do sole source.
Mayor, when I was joining as a panelist, you cut out for just a second.
Sure. I was just saying, I don't remember another time where all we had to do was pass the resolution and we could just go sole source because we wanted to do the sole source. I thought there was some law around sole source and having to do several different requirements.
It's a good question. There have been times, that's the council action that's required is passing a resolution. And the specific statutory language that's required is if a purchase is limited to a single source of supply. And meeting with or talking with Scott and Jamie in the Parks Maintenance, it's pretty clear to me that based on the research they've done and the outreach they've done, that this is in fact limited to a single source of supply. So it's perfectly appropriate. And I would recommend, if council had questions or concerns about that, I would recommend them passing that resolution.
Great, thank you. That's my only question. Is there any other question for the rest of the council?
So no RFP needed.
Doesn't sound like it. Just need a resolution.
Only one place to buy it, so.
Okay, well, then I move to forward a resolution declaring HD Fowler Company the sole source of supply for purchasing cellular Toro Sentinel controllers to the council.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that motion unanimously carries. We'll forward that on to council and appreciate it. With that, we've reached the end of our agenda. So without objection, I'll call this meeting adjourned and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Something I was gonna add, I didn't add, is we've been using Toro Sentinel since between 2002 and 2005. I wasn't able to nail that down exactly. We had a product called Econ before that. Toro Sentinel bought Econ and it was converted over to Toro Sentinel in that 3-year time window.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah.
You know, we have, where I live in Horizon Point, we had put in smart system there, smart irrigation system,
Right.
and it's Rainbird
Yeah.
is what we have there.
Probably.
And I gotta tell you, it has been nothing but a nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, an absolute money pit.